Today, as a church, we're called to reflect on this holy family, Mary, Joseph, Jesus. Let's face it, our Christmas celebrations are certainly reflections of the facts that families come in all kinds of shapes and sizes with different stories and imperfections, in years of plenty for some and years of want for others. This year clearly marked by the pandemic and the Omicron variant. Every family is marked by its own dysfunctions, and often these are most manifest at family celebrations. This is true also when we think of the larger images of church, family rather. When we think of family, our original understanding of family is it's an image of the Trinity. Diversity and unity in love. Father, Son, and Spirit reflected in father, wife, father, mother, child, that fruitfulness of love. And that can be extended beyond our sense of family around a Christmas table to families we often talk about at workplaces, or families of our religious congregations, or families of our parish, or our church, or this liturgical assembly. Sometimes there can be a sense that we move from Christmas to Christmas, from New Year to New Year, and little changes other than our growing a little bit older. We can have a sense that we are victims of our histories, particularly in this time, rather than being actors on the grand stages of our lives. Like ancient Judaism, there were many days that we as families get it right, and many days that we're marked by our own imperfections and our sinfulness. To draw some comfort, we may need only think about the genealogy of Jesus that is traditionally read on Christmas Eve. That includes Jacob, who stole his place from his brother Esau, or an adulterous King David, or a prostitute, or other imperfect people prone to temptation and sin. It's a reminder that God uses us in all of our brokenness and all of our humanity, and it is into this kind of imperfect family story that Jesus is born. Jesus is born into this. And so, how are we, when we reflect on Jesus and Mary and Joseph, how are we to measure up? We have so many wonderful words in these readings today about how we are to honor our fathers. Particularly important when you know your father's seated in the front row. How we're to treat one another in our families, the things that those wonderful virtues we're to put on. But we're given a key to understanding how we are to live as family from the letter to the Colossians. There's a part of a line that's so clear that Scripture scholars tend to pass it over as not worthy of comment. The line for us reads, "Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly." Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. When we hear the word of Christ, what do we hear but the gospel? The whole of the person of Jesus Christ, his birth, life, ministry, healings, miracles, teaching, suffering, death, resurrection, ascension, and sending of the Spirit. Scripture scholar Margaret MacDonald summarizes this very phrase by saying, it's to let the word of Christ be alive in the hearts of believers as a dynamic force. So perhaps the question for us today, one day after Christmas, is what's the dynamic force of our life? Is it the gospel of Christ that is driving our every consideration for how we live out our mundane world, from the washing of the dishes, to the education of our children, to the care of our parents? Let the word of Christ live in you in abundance, we're being told today. And so we can ask, what kind of change will occur in us if we let this happen? Servant of God Dorothy Day put it this way: Christ is always with us, always asking for room in our hearts. Why? To dwell richly. If we allow that to happen, what does it look like? On December 10th, 200 miles of the center of our country were affected by the massive number of tornadoes. The Diocese of Owensboro is the diocese in which Mayfield is located. Susan Montalvo Gesser, the director of the Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Owensboro, shared a reflection. She writes, "In this past month, Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Owensboro, our staff has been busy resettling 300 Afghan refugees in our community. We still have more than 150 refugees in an Owensboro hotel because of our housing shortage." This was before the storms. When the storms hit December 10th, I called the natural leader of the group of Afghans, Kaibar, and told him we would need to reschedule our immigration appointments. I communicated that I would have less availability and we would be devoting a lot of my time to the relief effort necessitated by the tornadoes. I asked if he could explain that to the other residents of the hotel. That was early Saturday morning. I knew that Emmanuel, God, was present in Kaibar's response. The refugees had been through hell and wanted to assist their new neighbors. Since then, I have received many more messages from Afghans not yet in their own homes who wanted to assist. My paralegal and his family are without power, and while their home wasn't destroyed, they cannot stay in it. He wanted to help us in Mayfield, one of the hardest hit areas. He then came in early today to meet with my immigration appointments so that I could devote my time to disaster management. Our Mass with the survivors in Mayfield on Sunday was beautiful. They gathered in a church, St. Joseph, that was not their own. It was both Gaudete Sunday and the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. The church was packed with mostly Hispanic parishioners, and the pastor gave the most beautiful homily I've ever heard. He wove the idea of rejoicing in the midst of darkness with Our Lady's encounter and miracles with St. Juan Diego. Our Lady created beautiful flowers out of a barren, desolate mountaintop, which is not unlike the opportunity we have here, where everything has been destroyed. After Mass, we went to a parish that was heavily damaged. They will be without electricity and running water, sewer services for at least 60 days. I witnessed one of my clients and a St. Joseph parish member organizing delivery of warm food, clothing, and blankets. We were told that none of the buildings in the parish were usable after the storm. It is on the edge of what they now call the war zone. Yet here my client was, establishing a center for our outreach at the parish. One of the buildings will be our staging area for the residents of Mayfield. Seeing my client, hearing the homily, experiencing the reaction of my Afghan friends, has opened my eyes to one big realization that I've repeated over and over to diocesan staff, including our bishop, who has become a temporary Catholic Charities worker. God is not in the disaster, but he is definitely in the response. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. How often that happened in the Diocese of Owensboro, and what an invitation it is for each of us, whether it's in our nuclear family, our parish family, our work family, our liturgical family. Let us, on this feast of the Holy Family, let the word of Christ dwell richly in us.
Please like, subscribe, or comment below.